It's a review of the book Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, right here, by Ralph Epperson. And I spoke to him on the phone. Nice guy. You can call him yourself, and he will speak to you. You can order this booklet yourself. Just got to pay for the shipping. You can write this or call the number. And when I called, Ralph Epperson himself answered. Spoke to him for 30-40 minutes. Pretty nice guy. He'll talk to anybody. I heard Ralph Epperson on a William Cooper interview from Hour of the Time. It was actually a week-long interview, like, I don't know, 5 to 6 hours. Each one of Cooper's shows were an hour, so I think it was 5 or 6. It must have been 5. Anyway, I'm going to read from this, and then when it gets to the quotes, I might read from Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, prepared for the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree for the Southern Jurisdiction of the United States and published by its authority. 1958. This is the revised edition. It's got 218 pages of references in the back. Okay, so this is Ralph Epperson's words, not mine. But they are very interesting. I'd like to start this review by explaining that the quotations taken from Mr. Pike's book will, and all, be indented 1/2 of an inch on each side from the pages that follows. Whenever I have added one of my thoughts into one of Pike's quotes, I will separate my words from his by the use of these brackets. I've also utilized pertinent quotations from certain other writers, but I have attempted to properly identify the writer and the page number from the book I have found the quote in. All the other thoughts in this review are mine, Ralph Epperson's. Before I start the review of Mr. Pike's book, I thought it would be important to discuss several miscellaneous quotations from his writings to show the reader a little bit about the character and the wisdom of the writer. Mr. Pike had some strange views, and the following quotation should help the reader to understand the man who wrote them. For instance, he wrote this on page 293. I think I have all these marked, as you can see. The horse, the dog, the elephant are as conscious of the identity as we are. They think, dream, remember, argue with themselves, devise a plan, and reason. What is the intelligence of the man but the intellect of the animal in a higher degree or larger quantity? This is a curious statement, because it is commonly held today that the view is not scientifically correct. Animals do not plan nor reason, and it does not seem to have much place in a book about Masons by the Messianic writer, but it does prove that the reader, with a little insight into thinking of Mr. Pike. Another of Mr. Pike's strange view is this one taken from page 297 in the book. I'm not going to refer to it. Everywhere in the world, labor is the slave of capital. This is also the view of Karl Marx, the communist, who has been frequently stated by other socialists and communists. This is not the place to challenge both this statement by Mr. Pike and the similar one by Marx at any great length, but very simply, this belief is not true. Should the reader wish to examine the fallacies of men like Marx and Pike, they may refer to the chapters in Communism and Socialism in my book entitled The Unseen Hand. No, it's not my book, it's Ralph Epperson. Because it is there that I prove the assertion is a gross distortion of the truth. Okay. Mr. Pike also wrote about one of the public claims of the Masonic Lodge. They claim that they are not involved in politics and that they are a charitable group out to further the best interest of mankind. However, Mr. Pike does not agree. He clearly states that they are involved in fomenting revolutions all over the world. He states this on page 330. Masonry hatches no premature revolutions. Emphasis added by the reviewer. Notice that the Masons hatch no premature revolutions. That means that they wait until it is the proper time to hatch a revolution. Yet, the Masons are quick to point out that they are not involved in politics. But here Mr. Pike points out that they are indeed a political organization hatching revolutions when the time is ripe. Mr. Pike says on page 24 that Masonry aided in bringing about the French Revolution. So apparently that revolution was deemed not to be premature. In other words, the Masons felt it had to occur, and they hatched it. And to show you that Mr. Pike's statement about their involvement in world affairs is true, a reader is urged to read the following quotations from Manly P. Hall, another 33rd degree Freemason, who wrote the following about Masonry on 451 of his book entitled Lectures on Ancient Philosophy. It is the most powerful organization in the land. And to show just how powerful they are, he wrote on page 100 of another one of his books, this one entitled The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. Masonry is an ordainer of kings. Its hand has shaped the destinies of worlds. Mr. Hall knows that Masons that hatch no premature revolutions shape the destinies of worlds, and that the average person in the world simply has not heard this. And to show the reader that he considers the public to be too ignorant to discover this truth, he contemptuously wrote about we, the people on this earth, on page 58 in another one of his works entitled What the Ancient Wisdom Expects of Its Disciples. If the Masons are invisible powers behind the thrones of earth, and men are but marionettes dancing while the invisible ones pull the string, we see the dancer, but the mastermind that does the work remains concealed by the cloak of silence. So, fellow marionettes, I am hopeful that you can see just how important it is that we learn all we can about the Masonic Lodge. Because, even if we do not know what the Masons rule and the rulers behind the scenes of our governments, Albert Pike pointed out that we will soon demand that we be led by them. He wrote this on page 817 of Morals and Dogma. Let me see if I have that one marked. I do. The world will soon come to us for its sovereigns and pontiffs. We shall constitute the equilibrium of the universe and be rulers over the masters of the world. Interesting. So, we the people of the world, according to both these Masons, will soon be asking the Masons to rule our churches and governments, but it would seem that process has already started. But we the people are blissfully unaware of that fact. We just don't understand because they are not telling us. We are being intentionally misled, as we shall see. A good place to start a study in the Masonic part of Mr. Pike's book entitled Morals and Dogma would be the page 4 on that book. The author or himself states that the page in that book is not intended for the world at large, and that the statement was further amplified on the first page of one of the books that I found in a used bookstore. That book had a black inked statement made by rubber stamp on the page stating, "Esoteric book for Scottish Rite use only, to be returned upon withdrawal or death of recipient." I think mine says that. I don't think it says esoteric book, but maybe it doesn't. Anyway. So the book entitled Morals and Dogma was written for only certain people. The Masons are keeping the truth of the book from non-Masonic public first by suggesting that they not be allowed to read it, and then by saying that not even all of the Masons who read the book will understand it. That means that even if a non-member did discover the book in a used bookstore or was given one by a Mason, Mr. Pike is saying that he could not understand what the book said because the writer used to conceal the language inside the book, and that this language was used to keep the truth from even some of the Masons. In fact, the only certain individuals are allowed to learn the real truth behind the symbols, and the book calls for certain individuals, or adepts. Mr. Pike wrote this on page 849. It is for the adepts to understand the meaning of symbols. And I'll start another video because this one's about over.